Welcome, everybody, to the Advanced Selling Podcast, the longest-running sales training podcast in the history of podcasts. Another solo episode. You guys are getting tired of hearing me. This is Bryan Neal, not without, I should say, my normal co-host, Bill. Another little solo episode brought to you by Blind Zebra Sales Operating System. High encouragement for you if you've been listening to the podcast for any length of time, whether you're a leader or salesperson, and you want to figure out, like, what is this sales operating system all about? I've got something I swear I'd never have. I have a really, really big 3-ring binder full of tools, and companies are coming in and getting certified to use those tools back at their shop. And it's been a great launch. We've been at it about a year. We have 21 now certified coaches as of this recording in September of 2024. And we'd love to have some more podcast listeners in the mix. So just go to blind-zebra.com. The whole thing talks about Blind Zebra Sales Operating System. The next one, I'll timestamp this episode, even though you're not supposed to, but I will. It's September of 2024, and we're doing our next certification class in December of 2024. We've got 5 people committed to that already. We'd love to have you, some of our listeners, in there. It's a corporate gig too, by the way. You can't like individually do it. It's more for your company to pay. So check it out there. That's good. And this is awesome because this is my second recording of the day. And I actually remembered to press record. The last guest I had this morning, I'm Mr. Like, I got to be a podcasting 18 years, a billion downloads. And then I start the podcast episode. I didn't hit record for the first 10 minutes. So I'll bring my guest in now. And thank God, Matt, that I did this. So, and I told you how do I say your last name? It's Wittlief. Wittlief. Yep. See, I've been practicing. Matt Wittlief is with me today from Zinc Partners. Is that what we say? Zinc Partners?
Yep. Zinc Partners. Zinc
Partners are good. Work. Zinc. Yep. Okay.
Yep.
A great supporter of ours for our big VP of Sales annual event called Huddle, which you can also find out about on blind-zebra.com. But thrilled that you're here. Number one, that you're a great partner of ours. We had a conversation this morning. But 2, because of what you all do for a living. We're going to get into that later in the episode today. But just start, because it's a very unique background. Just tell our Advanced Selling Podcast tribe how you got your way into sales.
Yeah. Thanks, Bryan. Glad to be here. So, unique journey probably to getting into the position today of being a go-to-market leader. I started out with a master's degree in mathematics, right? And probably thought I was going into academia. And the last thing I ever thought I would be was a salesperson. Got my first job out of school at a timeshare company, which probably further reinforced my, perceptions of salespeople a little bit, right? And had a strong, my background is strongly in data and analytics, right? That's what I love, and that's what I learned to live and breathe. So, spent a good chunk of my career actually at that first timeshare company. Learned a lot of stuff, wore a few different hats, so I got to see lots of parts of the business, and then ventured out into the consulting world and I've been now in the Salesforce consulting ecosystem for about 9 years, previously at a company called Spring ML, where, went from startup to, private equity backed scale up. So fun journey, leading that team. And then now over here at Zinc Partners and excited to, lead the growth of this company forward.
I love this. And I learned this morning in my prep that Matt was a math major. What he left out was he have a master's degree in math. So it just keeps getting worse, man. But by the time we do the next episode, it's like, I had a PhD and, a couple of theorems and postulates that I'm trying to prove, put myself in the book. It's fantastic. But what I love about this, and I say this all the time, if sales is 90% process, 10% magic, so is algebra, so is geometry, right? Math, I know too, as someone with a master's degree, it's super simple, mostly because your brain works in steps of things. And if you do the steps, it's almost, I won't say it's impossible to fail, but it's really hard to, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what I learned along the way, which I think has helped serve my understanding of trying to be a good salesperson, or at least, I'd rather think of it as a, customer success person, right? Yes. Critical thinking. And, I remember wrapping up grad school, not knowing what the world looked like, what type of job I would want to have. And how can I explain the skills that I have as somebody who can go solve math problems and theorems and do logic and, this sort of thing. And, it took several years, but we had a corporate coach actually come in at one point and gave they give personality profiles and these different diagnostics and things like that, and I scored really well in critical thinking. It's like, okay, that's the thing,
Ta-da.
right? So but yeah, to me, critical thinking combined with empathy, right? Being able to put yourself in the shoes of whoever you're talking to, again, whether it's one of your colleagues or your prospect or your existing customer, to try to understand where they're coming from and how can we weave a solution together. I mean, those to me, that's like the magic formula right there.
That is, I'm so glad you said the second part, which is a little bit of a surprise. I'm judging the math major, the math brain. To have empathy with critical thinking together is a ridiculous formula for those of you who are listening to this, because critical thinking, here's what I love about critical thinking. Salespeople are so wired to get yes and affirmation and positive things. Critical thinking isn't loaded, right? You prove something right or wrong, it's yes or no. It's not like, I'm going to prove this and hope it's right. And when you do that with the human side of empathy, you just can't lose. I'm really glad you said that. That's fantastic.
Yeah. And I think just adding to that a little bit, Brian, right? Like it sometimes it's not the yes or the no. It's the, what are the 5 different options or ways that we can take this thing forward and get creative about finding a yes or agreeing mutually that it should be a no.
Yes. And it could be a no for now because things change. Like you said, you went from a startup to PE backed, so you were different. So there's so many, it's such a good lesson for everyone to hear that. Critical thinking plus empathy equals lights out. It's really good. Lights out sales. It's good. So let's get into what you do now for a living, which is in your world, Salesforce, CRM world. And we have some HubSpot listeners. So we'll try to keep this brand agnostic, but we're going to talk about CRM and anything related to your CRM around you as the salesperson first, and your CRM. I've heard the term CRM hygiene or CRM compliance and things like that. And then we're going to talk to the sales leaders a little bit here in today's episode about what can they do. So let's start with the salesperson. So I'm going to pose what I hear all the time, and you've been in go-to-market seats for a while. Things that, from the, I don't know how to use it at all, to it's a waste of my time. It's just for big brother. It doesn't value. Those are the things we hear. Help our listeners just start to change that mentality just a little bit, not all the way, just a little bit. What advice do you give?
Look, I've seen this hundreds of times, right? And it is tough to kind of move past thinking of your CRM as, I've heard glorified Rolodex, right? From time to time. And what we've always taken forward in a philosophy with, at least the objective, right? The ideal is to move from, having to work to get things into your CRM to having the CRM work for you, right? As a salesperson. So if you're stuck with all that you have to do is update notes and fields that like you're never going to look at again, obviously it just feels like a burden, right? And so I think the important piece is truly understanding the business process that you as a sales individual contributor and maybe your first line manager kind of go through day to day to figure out like what's the information that's actually important to you. How is this going to help you do your job better, make smarter decisions about what next steps to take? Like starting with the framework of the business process or the sales process, right? Which I know you're a big believer in, Brian, right? Is got to be where you start. Because if you're just capturing extra data for no purpose, rhyme, or reason, and you never see the value of it coming back to you, then it starts to feel like a burden as opposed to something that can work for you. And then, my background, again, data and analytics, right? It's how can we start to, take some of that information now that is in the CRM and light it up as good information that's going to help you figure out how to take the right next step or prioritize your day a little bit better or know the deals that you've got to pay some attention to. That's kind of the way we take a look at this. That's
fantastic. That's when it becomes, people talk about it as a source of truth or a source of action versus a source of record, or you've heard those sayings.
Love it.
And I just had this happen in a training session. So this is validating what Matt's talking about. I was doing some coaching, some prospect list building from an existing CRM database with one of my clients, and it was live. So we always do everything live at BZ. So they're in their deal, they're working their stuff. And this one woman, she's a great salesperson. She's like, I asked them to go look for closed loss deals because we're trying to build a go-to list for closed loss last 12 months. Because most people lost a deal in February and never talk to them again for like 2 years. Yeah. And you should, so we're doing this. She goes, well, I can only see these things. And she realized her default setting was recently viewed. Mm. And so here, when you're in the recently viewed world, it's like, I likened it to having like a really big closet full of clothes, but you're only looking at the first rack and you're just wearing what's on that rack. And I come by and like spread them apart. Like, dude, there's 3 more racks.
Do you remember that outfit?
Yeah, exactly. And then it's still got tags on it from Christmas. You're like, oh my God, you know what I mean? So I love when you said the words, it helps me prioritize and decide on what I need to do today. Or if I'm going into the future, it's a place where I can go that says, hey, I can go and re-engage with someone that I lost in the past. Yep. Whatever. So I'm really, really glad to hear you say that. So what about the leader now? Let's talk to the sales managers for a minute, because they tend to be stuck in the middle. They used to be a salesperson. And they were probably not very good at Salesforce, and now or HubSpot, and now they're hammering their team. I got to get this stuff in, but they need to get it in because their CEO, their board, their PE firm is asking for all the forecasts. So let's talk about forecasting and just your advice for sales leaders on how to just be better at this, this nebulous sort of thing like accurate forecasting and selling.
Yeah. I mean, sales leaders get stuck in the middle of this all the time. And you've got finance knocking down your door, trying to make sure you've got a good number, and, your leadership and from other angles. And, how do I extract the real information from my team to have credibility? Because I think that's like the biggest key to me is within forecasting from a process perspective. It's all about the credibility. And so, if a sales leader or even the CRO loses credibility with the CFO, like that's just not a good place to be, right? You're not going to be able to, get the investments you need to, drive your go-to-market stronger if you can't even put trust or faith back with the person who's holding the checkbook to make things happen. So being able to ensure you've got data quality moving from the bottom of the chain all the way up is important. And so, the way I've talked about forecasting in the past, right? It's both an art and a science, right? And there's a blend of things coming from the bottom up as well as the top down, right? So a few kind of different angles that I encourage teams to look at, right? One is literally just, where are all my opportunities? What stages are in the end? What's my weighted probability against the amount? And then kind of roll that up. That's one point of view that you can take in as a data point. The second, is a traditional, like, is it in or is it out, right? And or maybe you can get into different forecast categories of manager adjustments, and is it up plus or this and that. But some flavor of in or out is ultimately kind of a very binary way that you can look at how you're going to either close the month or the quarter. And then another perspective, of course, is just what's my historical trend rates, right? What the last 5 quarters, I've come into a month with X amount of pipeline, I close Y% of it. That gives you a number, right, that you can help triangulate to. So I think as you start to think about improving your ability to make that call, whether again you're at the sales manager having to report up to the next tier, or the sales leader looking across the board, or a sales ops team that's supporting this entire process, like those are 3 great perspectives that kind of blend together to ultimately try to create credibility in a number.
That's fantastic. So I want to like stamp that credibility is about what I say is going to happen happening. It's not about having everything happen.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I think sales leaders get stuck in this. They better report a big number forecast to the board or they're in trouble. I disagree. You better report the accurate number to the board. Then you won't be in trouble. It might be a little hot, but you're not in trouble. Does that make sense? Is that fair?
Yeah. 100%. Like, I mean, missing a forecast by, 5% is certainly, or missing a lower forecast by 5% versus missing a bigger forecast by 50% it's a whole different conversation.
Yes. Amen. It is. Yeah. And I don't think some sales leaders don't realize that is even just like for your own career growth and when the CEO or board is looking at you as a contributor, they're going, you know what? I can always rely on Matt's forecast. He's accurate. I don't always like it, but I can always
Might not
rely
always
on it.
like it.
Right.
Yeah.
But I can
Because
rely
so many
on
other
Matt. Yeah,
decisions have to go downstream from there, right? Like,
absolutely.
great, here's your top line booking number, your sales number, but like, okay, how's that going to translate into the next 2-3 quarters from a revenue perspective and margin and OpEx and all this sort of stuff, so that you can ultimately understand where you want to invest. And, have you right sized your team? Lots of different questions need to come
That's
off
so
of
great.
that number. And so, again, having credibility in that is so important. Otherwise, there's the potential for so many other decisions to not be correct.
That's awesome. And we get in sales, and I am one. We're the worst. We just all we think about it. We're so selfish. We just think about ourselves, right? The sales team and we don't think about ops or finance or cash flow or if the customer pays well or not. And you're looking at it from a very holistic point of view. I think it's a good lesson for a sales leader to think about the cross-functional impact of a bad forecast. It affects everybody: ops, finance, cash flow, accounting, billing, collecting, all that, right? And hiring. Interesting. It's really, really great. Here's something I hear all the time, and I'd love to get your take on this question. And I hear it myself with my own like sales clients, but then I'll also watch the banter between sales leader and salesperson. Salesperson, especially the optimistic, happy, rose-colored glasses person. We're going through this data point going, this thing's been in the aging of this open opportunity. We're at 14 months now. Our average time to close is 4 months. We've had no activity. I think we should close lost that. Salesperson goes, no. Hang on, Matt. No, hang on. Now here's the deal. Here we go. They're selling the deal to the sales leader. Mm-hmm. You're in that mix. You're the master's degree math guy. What advice do you give to both sides? What advice do you give to the salesperson, and what advice do you give to the sales leader who's in that little conversation? It happens all the time. Happens every week.
And
yes,
I've lived on both sides of that
exactly.
Too, right? I wish there was a perfect answer on that. There really isn't. I mean, I have had deals that have aged well beyond what they should have ever aged, and then boom, come to life, right?
Yeah.
And so there are moments where something's real. And so I think at the end, Bryan, I would say, I mean, we'll use trust this time instead of credibility, right? Mm-hmm. Having trust between the salesperson and the sales leader becomes the important piece of this, right? So that we can get signal from data, no doubt about it, right? And we're getting better and better every day with the advancements in technology, but like, technology is not going to replace the gut and the intuition of a human being anytime soon. And so there has to be that balance between knowing what and knowing the person you're talking to and the facts on the ground versus necessarily just what you're getting from a data signal. I will say probably 9 times out of 10 that deal does need to be closed lost, or maybe even more.
Yeah.
But making sure you truly understand the why, and I think maybe it comes back to the empathy piece too. What's the internal motivation of that seller that is saying like, no, like, hang on, keep this open. Are they starved for other pipeline, right? I mean, is this a signal of other problems going on in their book that need to be resolved?
That's awesome. Yeah, it's a tough, and I'm with you. And there's no right answer. I just watch it every week, as sometimes multiple times a week. And my sales leader clients, they're in that. I hear their side, then I hear the salesperson side, and then I just think it's something we always have to continue to work to improve that. And I love the idea of like if we go down the concept of let's build trust together. So the salesperson go, "Hey, boss, trust me." The boss can go, "Hey, I trust you," or vice versa. We're in a really great place. And what I love about working in the NFL on Sundays, all the pontification and talk and opinions at the end in February, there's going to be one world champion. End of story. Doesn't matter what happened at all, right? And so time will tell us, time will inform us where that kind of like a trust tree goes, right? We all have those. That's great insight. Awesome. So tell the Advanced Selling Podcast listeners and Worldwide Tribe how they can get a hold of Matt, how they can get a hold of Zinc.
Yeah, sure. I mean, probably the easiest way is on LinkedIn. So on LinkedIn, it's Zinc Partners LLC. We should be pretty easy to find. That's Zinc, like the element.
Yes.
ZINC.
Yes.
And so if you go there, you should be able to pretty easily find me. I'm the only Matt. Don't worry about trying to spell my last name.
Right, or say
I'm
it.
currently the only Matt at Zinc Partners. I'm in the role of president, so you should be able to find me that way as well. And
Yeah.
feel free to send me an email and ask to connect and tell me that you heard me here on the podcast.
Yeah, I would say if you are especially sales leaders, if you have this struggle, you've heard Matt and I banter about this a little bit. If you have this struggle of, man, I got to get better at forecasting. And even if you just want a little check and balance, someone who's got a master's degree in math and understands sales, just to, talk through something. Yeah, I'm sure Matt would take your call if you're an advanced filling podcast guy. And just let that go where it goes. But it's a really important thing for all of us to find our way into good CRM work. If you're a salesperson, find your way into it. If you're a leader, find your way into it. Don't don't shut the door on it. It's like, I have to do this. It's not that anymore. We've got to learn to use this as a tool. So, okay. Thanks again for listening, everybody. Go again to blind-zebra.com if you want to learn about the Blind Zebra Sales Operating System and our certification here in September of 2024. We're currently booking seats for our certification program in December, first week of December 2024. We have 5 committed to that, and we'll limit that to about 20. So get while the getting's good. And go to our LinkedIn group. Just go to LinkedIn Advanced Selling Podcast and go spend time with 13,000 of your friends who also listen to the podcast. And I will see you next time on the Advanced Selling Podcast.